Welcome to my podcast, You Are More. I'm your host, Amy, and I could not be more thrilled today than to have my dear friend, Krystal Stewart, on. Krystal I don't even know what to call her. She's full of life. She's full of energy. She's full of faith. She's full of adventure. And she's God's girl. So I'm going to let you, Krystal, can you just give us kind of a 3-minute, who are you?
Yes, thank you so much, Amy, for the invite to be on your podcast. Of course, if you've been following Amy for a while, she's always big on You Are More. And this girl has been encourager in my life for almost 8 years, telling me, You are more, Krystal. I see it in you. And just to tell a little bit about myself, so I will be 42. Tomorrow is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
I I am a mom of five, been married almost 25 years in April, and been in the real estate industry for almost 5 years now. And actually met Amy many years before I went into the real estate industry. And she was that one that gave me the courage when I was in a difficult situation in another state and ended up picking up the phone call, was like, Amy, what do I do in this situation? And she's like, let me pray about this. Let me think about this tonight, and I'll give you some advice tomorrow. Called me back the next day. She gave me some guidance, which shifted me into the right environment. And from that point, my career totally took off. So I respect her. I respect her advice, and so glad to have her in my life.
That's awesome, Krystal. I'm so thankful. There are those moments, right? Well, Krystal has an incredible story. Sometimes there's just those people that you meet that you have that automatic connect with. And when I met Krystal and her husband Ronnie, I automatically just had like a connect to them. Like they just dropped in my heart. And when she called me like 4 years later, I don't think I'd really talked to you, but you reached out to me like 4 years later. She's like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm like, I remember you. I knew you, right? And so Krystal's got an amazing, amazing testimony, an amazing story. And for those of you that are in a situation where you're locked into fear and things are everything's upside down in your life. Krystal has a book that we're going to talk about called Claim Your Courage. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller. And it is a book it's a must read for those walking through anything who've got big dreams and a big God and want to see big purpose in their life. It is a book that it's a must have. So Krystal, let's start back to, you and Ronnie are pastoring a church, and is it in Orlando?
We were in Florida, so we were in Pasco County, which is around about an hour from Orlando. It's near to Tampa. We did a church plant there, is what it's called. For anyone that's in the church world, started it from nothing and had pastored the church for 14 years. And literally, when we started this, we started with nothing, and each step was a step of faith. And we just watched God do incredible things through the ministry. We had a really big evangelism ministry, and we really reached out to the homeless in our community. We fed almost 2,000 people hot meals every single week.
Wow.
And it was just an incredible time to reach out to our community.
So you're getting things going. Things are starting to go really well. You've got 3 kids. You're in your early 30s. Tell me next steps, next chapter.
So if anyone has built a business on here, the beginning is just grinding, and it's no difference in the church world. So, I mean, we gave our heart, our soul, and more to getting things off the ground, and sacrifice. And we were finally reaching that point where we were starting to just see things start to blossom. And we moved into a building, had renovated it, from an old grocery store, and the church was blossoming. And I finally got to the point where I had health insurance. And if you're a church planter, you sacrifice a lot of things. And one of the things I sacrificed was health insurance. I was young, I was healthy. Who needs health insurance? So didn't go to those regular checkups. Who needs those? Those are for old people. So finally, after many years of not going for my regular checkups, I went to one and was just astonished when the doctor came back and said, this test is a little abnormal. We need to run this again. And from that point on, we just found ourselves going through this totally different path that we were not expecting to walk through. I ended up having a complete hysterectomy, thought it would just be a quick procedure. Everything would be done. My cancer wasn't gone from that point, and it threw me into menopause, which was not fun. And from that point on, it just was like fear gripped my life. And if you get a chance to read my book, I talk about fear a lot. It's not just about health. but fear gripping my life in other areas and having to overcome that. And it just became another part of my story where I had to overcome fear and find many times you want to run from that thing that's chasing you, but to overcome fear, you actually have to run towards it.
Right.
I don't know if you just seen that. Did you just see
I
that little
did.
thing in the video?
I don't know what that was, but all right. So, literally, you're 32, 33 years old, and you get diagnosed with cancer.
Yes.
You've got small children at home, is that right?
Yes. So I had 3 children at the time.
With dreams of more.
With
With
dreams of more, dreams to, further our family, further what we're doing in our life. And although it was just a physical battle I was going through, you don't understand how much mentally it affects you. And mentally, I couldn't even think. I couldn't think of what to do in the next step. And, it just became a really challenging time.
right. So, tell me how so I think that when you get those those words spoken over you, like everything, like all noise, all activity stops, right?
Yes.
The world
Uh,
stops. It might not be able to stop it around you, but like everything gets really like crystallized and really definitive quickly.
Yes, and the voice of fear was a familiar voice to me. It was not the first time I've heard the voice of fear, as if you read my story, I overcame that many times in my life from different obstacles. But that same voice came back in my ear and started traumatizing me again of every worst case scenario and what was going to happen to my life. And I had to make some tough choices of how was I going to gain my courage for this battle and fight not just the health battle, but for me, it was the battle of fear. It was the mental battle.
Mhm. I think if anyone's been in that situation, they would say that is the real great battle. The
Yeah.
physical is one thing, that is true,
Yeah.
and that is a big deal, but the mental and the continued mental is a big it's a big thing to get that fear uprooted from you. Tell me this, if someone's walking through this right now, someone's just had a
Mm.
diagnosis over their life, what would you say to them was your your recipe, so to speak, of walking out of it victoriously?
It's funny that you use the word recipe because I was just writing this morning, just writing notes and writing. And one of the things that I wrote down was a little poem, but it was on the recipe of courage.
Okay.
And the only thing that I got was the beginning started, but I was talking about how it starts with a whole lot of fear and a whole lot of tears. And
Yeah.
that's how it starts. And people think, how does courage start with fear and tears? But that's exactly where it all starts from. And for me, when fear started coming in my life, I thought this means I don't have courage. I'm not able to stand up to this. But what I found is for courage to be present, fear has to be there. So
Mhm.
first you have to have the obstacle. You have to have the fear. And then
Mhm.
you get a whole lot of tears because it's like, oh my gosh, look at this giant that I'm facing right now.
Right.
And the biggest advice I could tell anybody is just to keep walking. Keep
Right.
walking by faith. You don't have to have, that's why we believe in a step of faith. You're not going to have the whole plan, but you're always going to know the next step you can take.
Right.
It might just be one, it might be the step for your next doctor's appointment. I don't know. But whatever the next step is, just focus on that. Everybody wants to have the whole map laid out, and you're not going to have that, but you're going to have the next step and take courage in taking the next step, believing that the next step's going to appear, which it will.
Yeah. How long did that battle last for you? The physical battle?
Well, again, I'm so grateful for my story is a lot different than other people that have walked through this. And I have many friends that have walked through cancer and different stages of their life and went through different experiences. I was blessed I didn't end up having to go through chemotherapy or radiation. And both of those things were told I was going to have to. I have a little bit of a twist in my story, a little bit of a miracle story. Um, there's an adoption story that comes into play there. And after having my hysterectomy, and in that, I like to call it that middle, that waiting room time from surgery, they're telling you you're going to have to do all of this, and then you're waiting to see the next specialist of what's going to happen. But you're
Right.
just healing from surgery. So in that meantime, I like to call it a mean time because it's really mean. That
Yeah.
mean time is
Yeah.
really mean.
Yeah.
Uh, but these two little precious babies came into our life, and that's another story. But they were 6 months and a year and a half. So while I was on my path of overthinking what was to happen in my life, I'm now taking whatever energy I have and taking care of these two babies, which, I thought was a temporary situation, and God had another plan for me. Um, so during that time, I'm thinking, God, why am I taking care of babies? I just had a hysterectomy, not supposed to be having any more kids. And remember, in 6 weeks, I'm supposed to be starting, chemo, radiation, seeing the next specialist, having this next plan. This makes no sense. But again, you just do whatever the next step is. And so the next step was you had diapers to change. You had things to do. You had babies that needed to eat.
Crystal,
And
let's
so
go back. This story is incredible. So they're pastoring this church, and one day the 2 kids were, like, placed at your doorstep, right?
yes, so when I was having my pity party the day after I got the diagnosis, when I went back for my pathology report, and the doctor told me it was not clean, I was going to have further treatment, and I needed to go see this next specialist. I go home, full of faith. I get in bed and said, I'm not getting out of bed till my next appointment. I
Yeah.
was so mad. Well, we at that time were doing renovation on our new church building, and my husband's like, just come up and just sit up there and watch me. We were putting new flooring in. So begrudgingly, I went up there. Um, and literally there was a homeless couple sleeping outside of our church with two babies. And again, the story is a very long story. I'm going to summarize. But they asked us to take them home for one night, and they were 6 months and a year and a half. And again, at that time, I'm still cut hip to hip, don't know what the future holds for me. I'm a mom of three, and thinking, what is happening? It was like one of those surreal moments of like, is this really happening to me? And as we were putting the babies in the car, we're thinking like, what is going on? But again, God had a greater plan for us, and it was a really crazy, amazing situation.
Tell me more about that. So you kept them for the night, and
Hmm.
then they asked you to keep them again, right?
Right. So we took them for a night, brought them back the next day. Um, Handed them the babies, of course, prayed over them, God, whatever the plan is that you have for them, thank you for letting us to be a small part, of their journey and of their plan. Dropped them off, gave the parents our phone number, and said, if, there, again, since we were very connected in the community, we had a lot of resources to give them and places that we
Right.
could send them. And, but we gave them our number and said, if you guys ever need anything or need a place for the boys, let us know. And we went home. And late the next night, we received a phone call, and they asked if we could pick the boys up another night. And so my husband and I look at each other. He's like, okay, but we met back at the church, picked them up, brought them home for another night. And then, of course, as we promised, we returned the boys the next day to them.
Right.
That was a Sunday. We went to church. Um, Sunday afternoon, we're walking out to our car, and are met out at our car with the couple, and they had a social worker with them, her social worker. And she just said, Miss Stewart, our social worker, are going to remove the boys from us, and asked if there's anybody that we know of that could keep them for a while. And we wanted to see if you would let them stay at your home while we make some decisions for our life. Again, we were not foster parents. We've never pursued adoption. We've never pursued anything. It was one of those situations out in our parking lot. And I look at the social worker and I says, so what happens at this point? And she said, Krystal, you either say yes and we sign a power of attorney on the car right now, or you say no, which is okay, no pressure. And I put them in my car, and then they are officially in foster care. And at that point, it's my decision on what happens. So we said yes. The boys went in our car, and 8 months later, they were my sons. So
Wow.
again, crazy story. But all of this was happening in that meantime of,
Right.
surgery and a doctor's appointment of what the future held for me. So as you can imagine, my brain was, what? This does not make sense right now.
So you guys go ahead and you adopt them, but you don't have the money to adopt them, right? Adoption's
Right.
expensive.
So
So tell me about that.
I get a clean bill of health before the adoption. thank
Okay.
God. When I went
Yeah.
back to my next appointment, I mean, this is my one of many miracle stories where just you can't explain it, whether you believe in miracles or not, or you
Yeah.
believe in faith or not. This is one of those moments where you hear from a doctor saying, I don't know what happened. This is
Yeah.
what it said, and this is what it says now. So, whether
Yeah.
people want to contribute this to God or not, I can just tell you I had a clear report from the doctors that said my pathology report was not clear after my surgery, and I was going to need further treatment. I go to my next appointment 6 weeks later. They go to do a further biopsy to discuss my options and the plan of what we're going to do. And the doctor, after the biopsy, looks at me and says, Krystal, we have nothing to biopsy. Whatever was there is gone. It's
Wow.
not there anymore. And I said,
That's
wait a minute.
awesome.
So, but I don't understand. Do I need to do chemo? Do I need to do radiation? What's the plan? She goes, Krystal, you don't understand. I don't even have anything to biopsy right now. Come
Wow.
back in 6 weeks and we'll check again. I've never gotten out of a place so fast in my life. Let me just tell you.
Yeah.
But from that point on, I went back in 6 weeks, was clean. Went back in 3 months, was clean. Went back in 3 months, was clean. Went back in 6 months, was clean. So it was a miracle story for me that if I would have overthought it in the beginning when these boys came into my life, I would have said, this doesn't make sense, not the right time. I have all of this stuff. Again, fear was telling me what my future held.
Uh-huh.
And really, God had a different plan for me. That was not what my future held because I am clearly healthy and
Yeah.
have been able to be their mom and healthy way. But that whole experience, whatever finances that we had, drained our finances again. So we were back
Right.
in that, I like to call it a Red Sea moment where you have this impassable, place in front of you, which I like to call the Red Sea. And that was the adoption. This was a private adoption. The mom had asked us. She was pregnant again, and there was a time frame where the adoption had to be completed before the next baby was born, or else all of the children would be put in foster care. Unique situation. I didn't know how this worked. I didn't know it was like that until they came to me and told me, oh my gosh, if you guys don't have an adoption in place within 6 weeks, then these kids are going to be removed from your home. At that point, we had already had them for 6 months. Nobody's taking my boys, right? If
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
their if it's not their biological mom, of course, my plan was always, to assist with that. But when I seen that that was not the plan, the state's not taking my boys. So we signed the paperwork from the private attorney that said we needed to have this amount of money by this date to have this adoption take place. And at that time, Amy, I'm telling you, we had nothing. Like we
Wow.
had nothing, but we signed the paper, and another miracle happened.
So tell me about that miracle because that's incredible too. I mean, it's like miracle after miracle.
This is like that miracle season, which again, I like to encourage people when you start going through a season, fear tells you this is what your season's going to look like, and to, stop everything. Don't move. Don't freeze. And,
Yeah.
fear wants to make you freeze. And if I
Yeah.
would have frozen that moment, this
Right.
miracle would not have taken place. I would not have had the beauty of having these precious two babies into my life because I would have stayed frozen at home, which is where I
Right.
wanted to be.
Right.
And that's what fear does, is it doesn't just rob you of where you are right now. It robs you of your future because it tells you what your future already is, and it makes you freeze from not taking the steps that you need to take to watch that beauty, unfold.
Wow.
So we were in that situation. We, signed the papers. 2 weeks before the adoption, we had a call from an organization across the street that said, we know your story. We did a lot of outreach with them. They were doing a fundraiser at the time to build a center in the community where people could reside. And, they did a lot of feeding ministry. They said, look, we're doing our big fundraiser. Can you guys come share our story? The news is your story. The news is going to be there. We want them to hear about the needs in the community because it's going to help us raise money. Well, we're always down for that. We're like, absolutely. If we can help you guys, we'll be there. So we show up, and the ABC News asked, she said, do you have a place? Of course, I'm going to share the story. We're going to raise money for this organization, but, your guys' story is incredible. What, you guys are doing. Do you guys have a place where people can go to if they want to, support you guys in your journey? And of course, pride was like, well, what are you going to do? And she's like, why don't you get a GoFundMe or something where if people want to give? And I'm like, I thought I have to get charity. I don't want people to give me money. She goes, well, this is just the way we're putting the website of this organization for people to go to, but we just want a place where if people want to go to support you guys, they can. So I'm standing there with this lady. She hands me my phones, like, just fill this out. I fill out this link. We stand there, we do this interview, not thinking, anything except we're supporting this organization. We go home, go to bed. I wake up the next day. The story had went viral. Within
Wow.
24 hours, all the funds that we needed for the adoption was already there. When I say viral, I'm getting calls from people in Australia. I mean, it went like Fox News, CNN, People
Wow.
Magazine, Today Show. I mean, USA
Wow.
Today. It just like out of nowhere. We were like,
Wow.
oh my gosh. But again, another miracle that if we were to overthink in the natural, this is impossible. We took the next step we could do. What was the step we could do? We didn't have the money to pay for it, but the contract was in front of us. We could sign the paper. Now you can call that stupid or whatever, foolish, whatever you want to call it. But that was the only step that was in front of us at that time. And that was the step that we took. We signed the paper. We didn't have the next step worked out, but God did. And He came through when we needed it.
Krystal, I see a theme. You're in a situation, you're going through a health crisis, and yet you meet a need, right?
Mm,
You met a need. So you had great need and you started meeting needs. I
yeah.
just believe that God meets you at your point of need when you meet others in need, right? And when you're walking through great trial and tribulation and you serve and you give and you do out of that place, I feel like the Lord just so rewards that. And I just think that I tell everybody, the way out is the path of helping people, the giving and contributing to people, right? So then let's fast forward. Again, you had great need because of the adoption expense. And what do? You go volunteer to help raise money for another church. Again, you step into a situation, and that is a theme in your life. I have seen it. That is a theme in your life. You can be in a bad spot. You can be in just a really difficult season. And what do? You step in and you continue to give, you continue to serve, and every open door and every opportunity to do that, if you feel led to do it, you step and do it. And I have seen the faithfulness of God in your life in many ways. And I've known you only a short time, and I'm so thankful for the last few years to have had more of an up close and personal um, uh, seat to watch this all transpire. But it's amazing to me that the same principle applies. You didn't even know it.
Yep.
Out of your need, you served. Out of your need, you did. You know what I mean?
I find
And
you're never asked to do,
provision came.
yeah, you're never asked to do more than you can.
Right,
So you may feel like you are being asked to do more than you can, but you're not. And so
right,
there's always something that you can do. And so that would be my advice to anybody that's in that situation. Whenever I'm in lack of a place, and me and you talk about this all the time, what do I have to give?
right.
There's something always I can give. Maybe it's,
Uh-huh.
it's not a lot. Maybe it's a word of encouragement. If I'm needing courage in my life, what can I do? I can encourage other people. And I
Right,
find by stepping into that, God meets me where I am. God meets my needs. People are not our source. And we may
right,
sometimes feel like they are, but people are not our source. And so
right,
it's just a way for us to give, and we receive. And it's not that you receive from the people, we receive from God, and not always in the ways we think we're going to, but He's
right,
faithful.
right. Do you guys see I'm when she was talking, it was like ding, 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 always serving, always giving, even in the midst of their own personal crisis, even in the midst of their hell. And the path of deliverance and the path of provision came forth. And that's incredible. And their story continues, and they're like the great adventurers of faith. They decide to relocate to Maryland right before COVID. And Crystal's like, "Hey, I think I'm going to get in the real estate business. Take it from
Well,
there."
at that time, now I'm a mom of five.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
unexpectedly. So you want to talk about planning for the future? Well, I went from planning as a mom of three to very quickly becoming a mom of five. And we make a move to Maryland. Did not, of course, nobody knew COVID was coming. And again, you can call it an unction for people that have faith or whatever. I know there's lots of different people that listen to your podcast. I can just only explain from my experience. But I had a dream one night, and I very specifically had this feeling that said, go into real estate. It's going to be an arc for your family. I woke up and thought, that's weird. But I looked at my husband. And I said, hey, Ronnie, I'm going to go in real estate. And he's like, huh? I'm like, yeah, it's going to be an arc for our family. Okay, I'm not really that crazy, but it happened. I go into real estate. At that time, the market was just, a normal good market. I'm on a team. It's not going well. I'm not making any money. I mean, I'm losing money because I put all the money into getting into real estate. That is when I call Amy, crying because I'm thinking, God, I feel like you told me go in real estate. It's going to be a blessing to my family. At this point, all it's done is taken from us. I
Yeah.
call you, you say, let me just think on this and pray about this and see if I have any wisdom for you. You called me back the next day, gave me some advice, helped me shift into a different team, into a different setting. And from that point on, boom, I made six figures that next year. COVID then happens. Our church at that time was a portable church, got shut down. And what carried us through that season? My real estate business. Real
Yeah.
estate at that time, as we know, boomed. And
Yeah.
while our income that we relied on, went down. So it was, again, another one of those steps of faith. And when it doesn't make sense, I don't understand this. Why am I making this step? I didn't know COVID was going to happen in a couple years. I didn't know that real estate income is what I was going to need. And I didn't even feel really good when I was walking through it because I wasn't making any money at the beginning. But
Yeah.
again, it was a little shift, which you gave me the advice on. And everything, really started to come into place at that time.
Yeah, it's incredible to just watch as you because you're a person that you leap. Some people don't leap. They feel fear and they just withdraw. But you because you have a proven track record, right?
Yeah.
I will say God has a proven track record in your life.
Yeah.
So you when you feel that hey, I got to do this, you do it. And fast forward again, you guys' life has just transitioned again. And because of COVID, that church got shut down, and your husband takes a church in Dallas. And now she's flying across the country selling real estate both in Dallas and in Maryland. Guys putting together amazing investment portfolios and packages for people that are, I mean, creating real wealth for her clients. And it's so fun to watch because she could have, this is what I find about Krystal. She doesn't put anything in a box. Like she's very flexible to flow where she needs to go. And I know that there's been a lot of stress with it. I know that there's been a lot of probably difficult days with it, but literally she's launched a real estate company in Dallas and in a time frame now where real estate's gotten a little bit interesting. It's a little different. We've had some
Yeah.
inventory issues. We've got some interest rate challenges. Things have not, it's not the, hey, everyone's going to make it kind of an environment, right? And she's done that. She's jumped into that. And in the meantime, she's continuing to carry her client base in Maryland, all of her investment commercial type stuff. And so it's amazing that you're able to balance both those worlds, all while still being a support to your husband while you're building a church and to your family. And only the grace of God could allow that to happen. And in the midst of it, she writes a book. So tell us about it. I mean, you blow my mind.
Well, again, and I share in the book, when it comes to the most unqualified person, that is me. So if you read the book, you will know a little bit more about that. But I'm clearly not qualified. And when I feel like God just honors our steps of faith, and the way I like to look at it as it's, I mean, again, I'm a mom, so got to break everything down into kid terms. So as a mom with kids, there's something about seeing my kids just try something. And even if
Mhm.
they fail, even if it doesn't work out, I mean, you're so proud of them for trying. You're so proud of them for taking that leap. And even if it wasn't meant to be, you're like, wow, I'm so proud of you. I kind of feel like that's how God looks at me. He's like, wow, I'm just so proud of her. Man, that one was a little too far, Krystal, but like, I'm proud of you for trying. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I just try. The way I got into commercial real estate is my very first client. Again, I was broke, had no money. If anybody starts out into real estate, the beginning is a little challenging and a little scary. And I just wanted a client. I just
Yeah.
wanted someone to sell something to, and I had nobody. Well, it came across, they said, hey, does anybody want this client that they're looking to buy investment properties? They want to buy a duplex, they want to buy a triplex. I had never even sold a condo, a single family home, nothing. I've never even written a contract in my life or a lease. And I go, oh, I'll take them. I'll take them. So So that became my very first client, was an investor that bought a triplex, and from that point on, they have bought multiple other buildings, and that led me into, "Hey, Krystal, everyone on our team, we've been a team of 20 years. Nobody ever deals with commercial clients. Since you do, you want to take them? Sure." So I started specializing in commercial, multifamily, and it's been a huge blessing for me to watch people build wealth, learn in that world. I had favor in that world, and that's why I still continue to fly to Maryland and sell investment properties. I sell investment properties here in Texas as well. But again, it was one of those just steps of faith. You say, "Yeah, I'll do it." And then, "Okay, God, help. Help me
Yeah.
figure this out."
Yeah. So you write your book, Claim Your Courage.
Mhm.
When did you release that? 2 years ago?
I think we are just now at 2 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
close to 2 years ago, you released this book, Claim Your Courage. Crystal, so many people today are experiencing great transition in their life. They're
Yeah.
walking through things that overwhelm them. They're walking through things that scare them. Nothing feels stable. To so many people that I talk to, like it's a common theme. You've walked through a lot of transition, a lot of where the ground wasn't level, it was shaky. What would be your best counsel to someone in that situation?
Find something that's steady, that's not tangible. To be honest with you, your workplace is not always steady. Your relationships around you are not always steady. Those are not things that you can control, right? You
Mhm.
can't control what's going on in the market. You can't sometimes control your health. You can't control your relationships, what's going on with other people. But there's one thing that you can control. For me, it's that inner place of faith. Everybody has something that they lean to. For me, it's my faith. So when
Right.
I can find peace there, everything else that I build comes back to that. Where even if I lose everything else out here, my job, maybe relationships, maybe things don't all go my way that I think are going to go my way, there's something that nobody can, or nothing can take away from me. And that's my
Right.
faith. And that's where
Right.
my confidence comes from. Because even when I believe that people are my source, or when I believe that an economy is my source, or, my job is my source, well, I'm going to freak out in markets like this. But
Right.
when I have something deeper that I believe no matter what, this is going to work for my good. If it doesn't work out in this way, it might be working out in a different way, and not being so set on things happening the way that I think that they should happen. So I would say, trust the process. It doesn't mean you have to trust the plan that you wrote. It may not happen that way. Find your faith, find whatever it is that you lean on, and let that be your foundation, because that's unshakable. So many things in this life are shakable, but there's
Yeah.
one thing that's unshakable. For me, it's my faith. So even if I lose everything, I still got something.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. So Crystal wears these funky boots. I literally I feel like the last couple times I've seen you, you always have, like, these funky boots on. I love shoes. I love funky boots. But I every time I think about her, I'm like, "She's small, but she is mighty." She is mighty on this earth. So, anyway, it has been a great, great honor to have you on this program today, Crystal. Guys, go download her book, go buy her book. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller, Claim Your Courage by Krystal Stewart. You'll be so blessed. And Crystal, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's amazing to have you on it. And go, girl. That's all I want to say to you is go, 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 girl.
Thank you. And thank you, Amy, for always being consistent in your encouragement and saying to me, even back then when I was struggling, just because I did it didn't mean I didn't do it with tears and a lot of fear. I did.
Yeah.
But she
Yeah.
would tell me back then, she's like, "You got this, Krystal. You're good, Chris." I mean, find somebody that can speak into your life. And so I appreciate what you're doing, the message that you're spreading, because I've seen it firsthand work in my life. So continue doing it.
Awesome. Remember always, guys, you are more. You're on this earth for more. You're on this earth to create great impact. And never forget that you truly are more.